Okay, and now we're going to take a closer look at plot, the first of our story elements. All right, the plot, of course, is important to the story because that is the story. And there are several parts to the plot. And so we are going to, so right here what you're looking at is a story map, also called a plot map. So when we look at that, we're going to focus in first is the exposition. In the exposition, that is where the story characters are introduced. So characters are introduced during the exposition part of the story, and as well as the setting. It's also introduced here. All right, next we're going to move to the rising action. So notice that I've kind of drawn this out as it looks almost like a mountain, so sometimes it's called the story mountain. All right, you might have used that terminology in elementary school. All right, so we start with the exposition. Characters are introduced, and so is the setting. Then we start seeing some of the actions of the story, and that's called the rising action. So I've drawn a couple points out across on the map here, so you can see that would be some different main events that might occur during the rising action. All right, so in the exposition, we know that we learned that our main character is Jessie Kaiser. Okay, she's the girl in the story that Ma is sending out on this dangerous mission. So, and we also learned that the story takes place. Looks like it's in the 1840s, right? In a small town called Clifton Village. But we're learning that, and we know that it's a small village in Indiana. What we think is a village that was settled, during the early 1840s, all right? But we also learned already from the end of chapter 3 that that it's actually 1996, and that's why I said setting is very important to this story. All right, so now during the rising action, so somewhere in every story along this phase, we're going to find, we're going to be introduced to the conflict of the story. So in this story, we have already been introduced to the conflict. All right, we've learned that we learned that a lot of the kids are starting to get sick with what Ma has identified as diphtheria. All right, so we don't even have to know what diphtheria is really at this point. We just know that it's affecting a lot of kids. We know that they're getting a sore throat. We know that they're getting high fevers, and that they're having to be in bed. They can't go to school. So we know it's going to be a serious disease. Okay, now then we move on to the next part of the story. So there's going to be lots of different parts to the rising action, and then we have the climax. That's the top of the mountain. All right, I look at that as the turning point of the story. What part of the story this is the part of the story that the main conflict begins to be resolved, and that's why it's called the turning point. Where is the story first able to start turning around? Where is that main character first able to start finding some kind of resolution or hope in their story? All right, so we're going to, as we read Running Out of Time, we're going to focus and see if we can really pinpoint what is the climax. Now, a lot of people describe that as being the most exciting point of the story. All right, I have to tell you to use caution when you say it's the most exciting point in the story, because there are lots of exciting points in some stories, and Running Out of Time is going to be one of them. We're going to go, oh my goodness, this is the climax of the story, just to find that, nope, that was just another problem in the story. Okay, so it's the turning point. We have to keep in mind that main problem of our story is that these kids have diphtheria, and we know that they need help, or something tragic may happen. All right, and so then after the turning point in the story, what are the actions that occur after that point? That would be considered the falling action. All right, so we aren't anywhere near that point yet. All right, and then the last part on our story map is the resolution. Then basically, how is the story resolved? That's where the author ties up all the loose ends that the reader may have and want resolution to before the story ends. All right, and then of course some stories will leave us with a sequel. All right, so we don't get complete resolution until we read a sequel. Running Out of Time will actually wrap up for us, so we don't have a sequel to Running Out of Time. All right, so that is plot. So if you want to review this again before we take our plot map test, that would be a good idea. So keep in mind that we will be revisiting this throughout our study on Running Out of Time. All right, thanks for watching.